traveling here as guests of Professor Newton Lee. His organization is called the Institute for Education and Research Studies, I believe, ifrs.org. So John and Irene were here. That's where we met. Since that time, we've been keeping in touch with each other as we go forward. And today he alerted me to the fact of this launch of this new app. Once I realized what he was trying to accomplish, I suggested that, first of all, he and I execute a memorandum of understanding, much like the one I already have executed with you, Jehoshaphat, and also to bring in Ed Fu Foundation with Sheldon, as you know, and Lady Alicia Hamilton, and a young man here in Los Angeles named Terrence Latimer. He's a millennial, but his company is called Startup Sharks. So they're expert at developing go-to-market strategies. And so the final person I added was Janice De Silva, one of our Goodwill ambassadors. She is the one that, as I said last year, was really instrumental in us being connected now, Jehoshaphat, because she recommended that in her capacity as a Goodwill ambassador in Cabo Verde, a very small island, as you know, off the east coast of Africa, she had spent 20 years as an employee of the United Nations, working specifically with UN Habitat. But she had reached a point in her career where she believed it was necessary to get more involved on the ground as opposed to just working at policy level. So she developed a development plan that would allow the local civil society to engage with the people on the ground, much like what you've done there in Kenya. One of the differences, however, is that Janice speaks four languages, and her native language is Portuguese. In addition to that, she speaks Spanish, English, and French. So ideally, she was prepared to represent the Portuguese-speaking African countries there in Africa. However, her mentor was the late minister of her country. He recommended that she focus on ECOWAS, that part of West Africa, and globally, because the Portuguese-speaking countries include Brazil, that would allow us then to engage with the country with the largest population of people of African descent outside the continent of Africa. So all these people have been added into the WhatsApp group, WhatsApp chat, and I attached two documents that discussed all the chat records that John and I have been having for the last couple of years, but more in particular in the last 24 hours. But I wanted to ask you, Jehoshaphat, if you would be open to reviewing the material first, and if you agree with this collaboration, to work with John with a long-term vision of not just your civic engagement from 2020 through 2021, and then 2021 through 2022, but to look at this as an overlap of the African Union's Agenda 2063 from 2013 to 2023, right? But also throughout the International Decade for People of African Descent, and of course the UN 2020 to 2030 Decade on Action, right? So if we could agree to those basic agreements, then that would let us, I think, begin to use publicity to expand the reach that we would have. So we're not chasing people, they're chasing us. Also, Jehoshaphat, I asked you to take a look at joining the United Nations Global Compact, because that is the umbrella or the framework that I believe can be very instrumental and important for us to shape this conversation around. Now, Janice has already got set up in 2 days from now, a global platform about whether we're going to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. I would like for you two, John and Jehoshaphat, to come up with not a presentation on that, but a description of how we achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, using your collaboration as an example of ways that we bring together people throughout the diaspora and the world to work on common problems to benefit humankind, if that makes sense to you.
Makes perfect sense to me. Josephat.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very glad to hear that this, and I welcome wholeheartedly this proposal. I would I will go take my time to go through the website again and the link, but I would also request Mr. John maybe to highlight areas in which we could partner. Our strength as a society of volunteers is, the immense reach that we have to the grassroots levels, to the villages of Kenya. So perhaps through the efforts of our volunteers, how do we then widen the reach and the scope of that which you are already doing in health matter, which is definitely a very, very good thing. Telemedicine is something that is needed. And as I see peripherally, it's a thing that is going to, you know, provide every individual with ease to healthcare as I see it. So perhaps, Mr. John, you could suggest areas in which or the curve will be effective or will be valuable in your program.
Thank you very much, Josephat. And I think it's a very right question. I mean, one of the ways is because one of the things we're doing is, for example, we've partnered with the Association of the Sisterhood of Kenya, and we launched in 15 of their 500 hospitals so far. And at the minute, in less than 5 weeks, we have 51,000 patients. And most of them are actually from the rural communities, because mainly we did from level 1 dispensary to level 4 hospitals. So you're talking about dispensary hospitals that even have no data, they just have books. You know this yourself. So we're digitizing them, then also bringing them into that ecosystem so the patient has access. So one is finding more of those type of partners in the rural networks, more of those type of hospitals. Then two is driving download of the application and use of the USSD to the public. So we're probably using your community workers as ambassadors to those grassroots communities so they can start activating people to download the app or use the USSD. And we use a very simple campaign around mental health. Because right now, as you know, in Kenya, mental health is a very big issue because of this COVID problem. Everybody is suffering from unspoken. So we could use that as an integrated campaign as we partner with Telkom Kenya as well, who are key partners. So we can use that and then get 1 million, 2, 3, 4 million people downloading the app using USSD, participating in this mental health campaign, and also participating in education campaign that we can actually find people who will pay them for money, especially those people who live in the rural communities. So if we focus it strategically as phase one, we want download of 2 million people in the rural communities. We focus around the program on mental health and education, and we use your network of community workers, and we work around how they get compensated, and then how we get measured as well. Then also we look at the network as how do we also activate some of those other rural hospitals. The model for Afia Record is actually for hospitals is actually really simple. We only charge the hospital $5 a year per patient. That's it.
Okay.
So that is why it's so affordable for hospitals, even small general practices, because the idea is to bring everybody into that ecosystem so the patient can move from any hospital to any hospital and making sure that their data is always available.
I think
I don't know
does
if that makes sense.
That is fine. Yeah, it does make sense. Can you send me just a small write up on that and how
yes,
you
I will.
envisage
If you drop me an email with your email address, I'll drop you mine. Give me an overview of your current ecosystem of how the network within the region, then also helps me to build a very interesting conversation around that as well too, so that when I drop you the email, there's clarity, there's call to action, and then there is next steps. Which I can do between now and Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm dropping you an email right after this call. I want us, when we have a conversation, we we follow it up with practical steps and something that is workable, because what you're really presenting is something that is very important for our population, especially in Kenya, and even to our health workers, hospitals, and doctors around. These are things that I think they
And the
need.
thing is, once we also get all the community health workers into our ecosystem, they also become our champions. So your community
Mhm.
workers also help to acquire all the community health workers in the grassroots economy. So I will send you all this in an email. But for me, we started now at 1,000 downloads in less than a week, and we want to get to 1 million downloads in Kenya alone by the end of December. And we
Well,
also
there's
want to help people in the rural community make money as well, learning about their health.
so John. What if you put yourself on mute now, Jehoshaphat? I'd like for you to tell John about your relationship with the state of the African diaspora, please. Jehoshaphat, are you there? I don't see you moving, but I'd like for Joseph. Well, just I'll explain to John. John, I actually met Jehoshaphat through a common acquaintance, or I should say friend, or even brother. His name is Dwayne Boyd. Yeah, it looks as though Jehoshaphat might have dropped out. But anyway, I'll continue. Dwayne Boyd is the agricultural minister for an organization called the State of the African Diaspora. Now, it's based in Jamaica, and it was actually launched during, I think, 2018, during the time that the former ambassador for the African Union to the diaspora, Arikana Chihambori Kwao, was still active as an ambassador. What has happened is that they have, because they're located in the Caribbean and specifically in Jamaica, which is its own sovereign country, it has worked throughout the Caribbean in an organization called CARICOM, which includes the not just the Caribbean islands, but also they have observer countries and partners such as Bermuda, which is where I kind of come in. My relationship to this is as a think tank, a sanctum think tank that's based in Bermuda. It was, which itself happened. Oh, there you are. Let me see here. Yeah, which itself began in 2000. I was here in Los Angeles. Well, let me first tell you, John, this is part of my 50-year plans, right? So a portion of my 50-year plan was as a alumni of an organization called Global Business Incubation.com. All right, so they're based here in Los Angeles. Oh, you're back?
Just to
Okay, great.
interrupt. Yeah, I'm back, and I think I have power interruption, which is not very good.
Well, look, Jehoshaphat, could you explain to him about the state of the African diaspora and your role there, please?
Yeah, the state of the African diaspora is the sixth region that has been that was established by the African Union, and so I'm working. I was appointed recently to work as a member of parliament, and I'm greatly engaged with the repatriation and restitution program. That is pursuing the stolen artifacts by the colonialists from Africa. We want them back to Africa. And also the people of the African descent who would love to relocate or even visit the continent. We are helping in making arrangements for them so that they can get, they can relocate to any country of their choice. So basically, that is what I do with the state of the African diaspora as a member of parliament for Kenya.
So the relevance of that, John, to what we're talking about, I believe we have to follow a page out of President Trump's book. And the only page I have in mind is the fact of using publicity to get more exposure than paying advertising does. So the idea is for us to shape our narrative.
I totally agree with you.
Yes. to shape our narrative going forward, so that what we do is we actually start from, I believe, African Union Agenda 2063 and work our way backwards. Because as you may or may not know, the Sustainable Development Goals were developed in 2015. They launched a campaign in 2013 called, excuse me, The World We Want. So they had about 3 million people around the world that contributed to what turned out to be the Sustainable Development Goals. What's less well known is that because the African Union was at that time formulating their Agenda 2063, it's their region that had the greatest number of ideas, if you would, be encapsulated into the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, there is, in fact, a chart that I'll share with you that shows the overlap between the two. But what I mean by controlling our own narrative, I have to tell you, John, that earlier this year, Jehoshaphat and I came up with a phrase called Afrikwanzaa, right? Because here in the United States, as you may know, Kwanzaa is a holiday celebrated once a year at the end of the year for 7 days. That was launched back in 1965 after this civil unrest, the Watts riots. It was launched here in a place called Leimert Park. Leimert Park is in the Crenshaw district here, which a lot of people around the world know, and it's the heart of a lot of our hip hop community as well. But John, my point is this: here in Los Angeles, the last African American cultural hub is being gentrified out of existence, and it's also being impacted by the changing demographics. When I moved here in Los Angeles from Georgia, from Macon, Georgia in 1980, the area where I live now, really, we had 70 to 80% of the population. After NAFTA was passed, the influx of Latinos has forced a change so that now there are about 25% of the African Americans are in the same area, right? However, Los Angeles is a big place, obviously, and the Crenshaw Leimert Park area is a part adjacent to a census tract called Windsor Hills. It's known as the Black Beverly Hills. There will be a $1.2 billion subway line that will be opening next year that will, for the first time, bring millions of tourists from around the world through the heart of the Black community before they go into the rest of the county. What I'm suggesting, John, is that we shape this narrative to show how our work there in Africa can also be replicated here in the United States, particularly through the Charles R. Drew University of Science and Medicine that's here in Los Angeles. It is the only HBCU west of the Mississippi. So I'm thinking, John, if we shape the narrative, show how now this work that you are doing with CAV Africa can have implications on other projects that are moving along simultaneously. Kwabena Boateng, he is the head of he's in Atlanta, Georgia. He's head of an organization called the African Diaspora Nation. Now, just last week, or 10 days ago or less, they had a global symposium of all the HBCUs here in the United States, connecting with universities on the African continent.
I would love to have spoken at that. That would be one of those publicity things that we definitely should tie into.
Well, there's part two of that, right? Because part two is that I was able to attend. However, I've seen zero social media promotion about the event, except through the people that actually did attend. That's an example of what I'm saying to you, is that in shaping our new narrative, we also need to have a new media platform, because there are only 5 corporations that own 95% of the world's media content now, or at least the broadcasting, I should say.
I think also if we get our own media broadcasters to get involved, say Black Entertainment TV, and then get our own Black superstars, there's a couple of them who have the right initiative, and tie that back into the Return to Africa and creating products from the Black community, then the rest of the nation, the rest of our people will begin to share the thing. Because I mean, from my experience in social sharing, is you need to find center points and make people feel like, oh my God, this person is talking about this, or this media network, or this type of people within the Black community, and then by default, 1 billion people across Africa will share this.
Well,
over 100 million people around the world who are also African
Yes.
descent, including the US, will share this. So we need to really, the collective power of what is Black people, and especially in the US, and those one of us who have access to the media limelight. And it's not even a question of money. It's just a question: can you, Michael Jordan, retweet what is happening in Africa with accuracy? That's it.
You put your finger on it. However, that's why I'm saying it's important for us to consider having our own media platform to do those things on. For example, as I mentioned to you, Lady Alicia Hamilton has the TRN.TV. They have about 400,000 passive subscribers right now, John. So what I'm suggesting is that we work with what we have, and the important distinction about this particular platform is that it's a private platform. It's not public. So you don't have to worry about watching a series on your health and then be transported to a porn hub or to vulgar hip hop. This is a controlled environment. And the idea is that for you, for example, once we establish, let's say, a channel for us for this project, then everyone that chooses to can add that channel as one of their preferred channels. They will get updates and information about it. But the flip side is that right now, for the 600 Have Africa volunteers who are part of their app, all those people could automatically be invited to participate with that. The 1,000 people, John, that you just registered could all be invited to subscribe. The benefit to you, to us, would be those become your database. In other words, you then can communicate with them about events that are going on, right? You can use that platform.
Absolutely.
You could use that platform to invite celebrities and others to the platform to drive more people to it. Every time they do, yes.
I totally agree. I mean, I think, and what will happen is I would then bring all my people, everybody who downloads the app, will also push them to the platform as well. So if we get 1 million people, that's another 1 million people on the platform. So I'm totally with you 100%.
Right. Well, the great news is that at this particular time, as I mentioned to you, the Revelation Network, TRN.TV, is basically faith-based and secular-oriented, right? So to me, I think you mentioned the hospital that you're working with is the Sisters of, what's the name of the hospital that you're working with? The Sisters of Kenya?
The Association of the Sisterhood of Kenya. I'll send it in the WhatsApp group, the website.
Now, let me ask you.
Through Sister Joyce Meyer.
Right. Now, when you say sister, does that mean it's a faith-based hospital?
Yeah, it's a faith-based. Yeah, they're nuns.
Exactly.
Yes.
So my point is that we have the Revelation Network, so we could technically use that as a means to grow our audience throughout the entire interfaith community worldwide, beginning with all the hospitals and institutions that are dealt with not just by that church, but even perhaps by the Vatican itself. In other words, if we're going to reach a worldwide audience, then having the agreement of the people at the top of the religion would be helpful, just as it would here if we were to have the head of the Baptist Convention, et cetera, so on, to be the head of that. So that's the kind of strategy that's important, I think, for you and me to talk with Alicia Hamilton about.
I agree.
Just to let both of you know, the challenges that she's facing now is that she needs personnel and manpower to take advantage of the platform that's existing. She actually, it's a customized design site. She did it herself from 2007 to now. But unfortunately, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You know that Irene owns one of the large media agencies in Tanzania and East Africa. And she was actually about to build a network. So it's something she can definitely, take over in terms of start running to kind of push the value proposition, because we're building a local team here. for the Media Network and the Media Alliance that we're building Pan-African as well, trying to build the largest media alliance in this part of the
Well, I
country.
did not.
So it's something that she's doing. That's her background.
Excellent, excellent. Well, fantastic. Then again, Jehoshaphat, I'll just trust you to just send me a recording of this. There's a lot of other information I think we could cover in general since we're here, but I'll defer to your time, gentlemen. It was, I think, we covered a lot of information. There's a lot more information to cover, but for example, with the Ed Fu Foundation, now they're here in the United States. They have access to tools and resources that we can use. For example, they have a Basecamp account that would normally cost $300 per month to use. It's a project management tool, as you may be familiar with it, John, or Jehoshaphat. But the idea is that now they do have access to this through the end of the year. I'm hoping that we can have a go-to-market strategy that can go global. And so we're pushing everything. I would like to get whatever number you have in mind, John, accomplished by no later than December 31st of 2020. There are multiple reasons why,
I agree.
but one reason why is because it was Kofi Annan, who, as you know, was the first sub-Saharan General Secretary of the United Nations, that launched the Global Compact in the year of 2000, at the same time the Millennium Development Goals were launched, right? That's where the allyship comes in, because again, looking at it from a public perspective, if we are to champion this particular platform, then what we do is we attract those corporations who already made public their commitment to be allies in this new transition. For example, you mentioned Microsoft. Microsoft is a founding member, or at least a participating member, of the United Nations Global Compact, as is Kyocera. Jehoshaphat, I hadn't brought this up with you before, but here in the United States, Kyocera is a Japanese-based company, but they came into our network through a local representative here in the Los Angeles area. Now we have the president of North America, Kyocera, sitting at our table saying they want to spend millions of dollars in the Black community here to improve their conditions. I'm suggesting that Kyocera also is a member of the United Nations Global Compact. So for allyship, John, as I suggested, I believe you can get a lot of mileage out of your relationship with Microsoft, and then also hold them accountable as members of the United Nations Global Compact to support our project. Now, just to let you know, the project I bring to the table, right, is to actually change the vector, if you would, or trajectory of the United Nations Global Compact as a means of providing a legacy, what Kofi Annan attended in the beginning, but also to deliver the solutions that he envisioned. Along with the Sustainable Development Goals, there was another project launched called the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. Now, that brings in the insurance companies. As you may or may not know, it was a hip hop icon, T.I., that just on July the 17th, he brought Lloyd's of London. He sent a public letter to Lloyd's of London demanding reparations for their role in the slave trade. That open letter that he sent gave them a specific deadline to reply. That deadline passed by yesterday. So if we take this seriously, I suggest that we ourselves consider how all of these relate to the United Nations, because it is in fact.
I actually suggest that we reach out to TI now that you've mentioned that.
Well, again, I was not. Here's the point, John. First, I think we have to create unity among ourselves so we know what we're doing, right?
Agreed.
But yes, the short answer is that I have access to TI. One of the members of my network, his name is the same as mine, Andrew Williams. He's a founding member of Public Enemy. Public Enemy can reach TI anytime they get ready. That's not a problem. The question is, how does this all make sense to everybody involved? So I believe our first requirement is to put our paperwork together amongst ourselves, because paperwork moves money. And then we have to, I think, take advantage of all of the reset, the global reset that we're working with. But I think we have to give a long-term vision. Our millennials are not going to wait for 50 years to have a solution. If we started today, it would take 328 years for the African Americans in the United States to reach the same economic condition that the whites are in right now. So that's not that to me, that is not an acceptable solution. The only paradigm shift I'm suggesting is that we bring in foreign direct investment into the hood, so to speak, of the United States, using hip hop as a currency that we use to engage people around the world. But John, that's where Afronauts comes in. That's where your animation comes in, because in order to reach the children, we have to use the tools and resources that they're most familiar with. So that's why I think it's so critically important that we look beyond our immediate needs and look at the overall picture of what we're trying to accomplish.
I totally agree with you. So, I mean, what would make sense, because I have to jump into another call.
Okay, great. Great.
Is if you then kind of lay out this framework based on this conversation
Yes.
we've had, what the steps are, I will send Josephat from my side what I think makes sense on our side too. That way we can then have a concise effort and then review that, a couple of emails back and forth, and between now and Wednesday with all the other folks, when they wake up as well, we might actually be able to have then a way forward.
Okay, well, thank you so very much. Go on to your next meeting, and I'll trust Josephat to give us a recording of this so that people that we bring into this will actually be able to catch up with us so we know where we're going forward.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.
You too.
All right, Jehoshaphat, I'm not sure if you're still there or not, but if you are, let us know. If you're not, I'm going to leave, and I hope that will end the recording. Yeah. Okay, I'm done. Thank you so much. I'm done.